Hello, welcome to Yates Makes. I'm in Derbyshire, in the Peak District. It's a bit wet, probably should have seen that coming, but you don't come to the Peak District for the weather. Mate, it's absolutely stunning here, beautiful, so different to where I live. Look, I'll flip the camera around and show you. Beautiful dry stone walls covered in moss. Literally every turn you go round there's a new little alley, a new little discovery. It's the best thing about coming away, is your eyes are open. Check this door out. This is crazy. So I had hoped to get out to do some kind of sketching outdoors, but you know, the rain's put pay to that this morning, so I'm just going to take a few photos because I think there's some subject matter around here that is going to be perfect for a technique I want to share with you. These beautiful old wooden gates going to be perfect. So I had a good wander and took some photos and really focusing on like doors and windows and this beautiful brickwork that you just get everywhere in this part of the world. Now these photos I've taken, I've edited on Snapseed just by using black and white filters, HDR, increasing contrast. Now the technique I want to experiment with, expand upon, goes right back to this tutorial that you might have seen. It's on the channel, I'll link it above, where I used a lino plate to do a kind of frottage rubbing of with a wax crayon, which I then use as a resist on the gel plate. This time I wanted to try masking tape collagraph to see how that worked as a rubbing. Now those of you that know my channel know I love masking tape collagraph, so and you'll know also that I generally like to do a drawing first and then build my collagraph on a thin sheet of plastic, acrylic, acetate or whatever. So here I am doing my drawing with stick and ink, brush and ink, dry brush. I'll include this. Of course you could just work straight over the photograph. It's not essential to do this. I just find, you know, I love drawing. It's my, you know, it's my favourite kind of art activity to do. So you know, any opportunity, and I think, you know, if you do draw first you get a kind of familiarity with your subject matter as well, which I then find helps me more get a feel for the, you know, the producing the collagraph stage. So I'm, you know, various a bit of, this is Quink ink I'm using, by the way, which is water soluble. That helps get a bit of texture, get a bit of tonal variation as well. Of course these things are quite challenging and interesting to try and achieve in the collagraph stage. We'll get onto that in a second. Here I am with my acetate sheet laid over my drawing. Of course, as I said, you could just print your edited photograph off. I would suggest editing because increasing the contrast, making it black and white is going to help guide you on this. It's going to show through your collagraph and act as a clearer guide, and, you know, reducing it just to monochrome as well I think helps. So on we go with our little bricks. So what I'm aiming for in terms of a technique here is not to kind of laboriously, faithfully get the accurate shape of each one. It's just a guide. I'm ripping these little blobby brick shapes. That's why these dry stone walls are so good, because they're quite irregular in ways, and I'm intentionally laying them on the edges, as you, well, I probably zoomed in a bit there so you can see, over the top of each other, because that is going to give me a slightly raised surface and hopefully kind of delineate the black lines that run between all of the stones. So off I go. I'll speed it along. You're not going to want to watch me rip every single brick, but you can see how they're layering up, very much overlapping on edges. This works for, you know, I've tried it I think in other videos you'll have seen, I'm sure, that I've put on the channel, for plumage on birds' feathers. You can use it in loads of different ways. Right, if you want a more accurate shape, this is just a bit of revision. I'll link up other collagraph tutorials above now, but just as a reminder, if there's very specific shapes you want, single layer of masking tape down, trace that shape. I would suggest doubling up the masking tape, you want to really think about the height you're building on the surface of your plate, because as we're going to be doing a rubbing from them, all of these heights are going to matter. The parts that stick up in higher relief than others are going to pick up more of your wax crayon, and therefore translate into more paint resisted, or that's the theory. You know, this is the first big contrast really, if I compare it to the lino print, which is the other, or the lino plate that I'd tried a rubbing from before. Obviously you're kind of stuck with the flat surface of the lino. This requires a lot more judgment in terms of the different heights, how they're going to pick up different amounts of wax crayon as you do your rubbing. Okay, all I'm doing there is just laying over another little thin ripped layer just to break up that shape a bit, and then you can just pop that down and it should fit near enough accurately. Okay, I think you get the idea. I'll just put a little more footage in now to give you an idea of how I applied the technique for this specific plate. Again, for details like the hinges on the door, I'm just sticking a couple of sheets down, or a couple of layers down, and cutting out the shape directly on the plate, not even drawing. You know, you don't have to be really tied to the original image, you can just use it as a basis to work from. So there you go, hinges on, you get the idea. Trying a little depression, hopefully that won't pick up, and maybe I'll be left with a little mark for the kind of bolts or the screws running through that wooden door, through the hinge into the door. Okay, I'm just coming to the last few bricks here. You've got to really like ripping masking tape to do this. I probably should have warned you. Of course you can do something a bit more simple. Oh, it's weird talking. I had quite an intense period of silence there, which I think is part of the appeal. Good to meditate for a while. Right, let's get this one on. I'm going to just put a little strip along there because I know it's all in shade, so I want to pick up a bit of ink or rubbing with the wax crayon. Alright, on the slate roof, which is up here, I'm just going to pick out a few highlights. So how would I do that? Let me think. Shall I just pull them out with a knife? Yeah. Just want some nice little clean highlights. If you go straight through, if you're doing this like I am on a piece of acetate here, you know, I have gone straight through there. It's not going to matter at all, especially where you want a clean shape. Just make sure you don't go through to your table. We're safe. Find the little fella now, come on. We're all set for the wax crayon rubbing. So you can see the plate here where all of those bricks or stones have overlapped. That's hopefully going to give me a raised line that will pick up when I do the rubbing, you know, and there's some more accurate kind of straight cut details as well, like the hinges and the kind of lintel across the door, etc. So if you flip that over onto this is just a normal sheet, I think probably about 70 GSM paper that you'd use in a copier printer, nice thin light paper. You don't want to use anything too thick for this, so I've just fixed it onto the back, and I'm using a fairly chunky wax crayon and making sure I've got a nice long flat edge, because I'm just going to start working really lightly over the whole surface just to get a feel for which are the most raised areas where I'm going to have to focus a bit more pressure to get some of the detail up. But you can see in quite a ghostly manner it's coming through already. So once I've done this first stage, I can then start being a bit more aggressive with the pressure. Okay, so I'm getting a much tighter grip of the wax crayon now, and I'm going to try and bring up a far bolder, stronger line where I need it, and you know, patches of tone. And it's quite hard to translate this onto video, but I am pressing pretty hard, and I'm angling the kind of tip of my wax crayon as well, just to try and pick up specific detail like the hinges. And obviously still going to want some of the white paper to come through, because that's what's going to hopefully lift off the acrylic paint from your gel plate in the transfer stage. Yeah, so you see me just working around a bit more kind of localized work rather than that big general sweep that I did at the start. And you know, you can work in at this stage quite a lot of tone. You know, you can add a lot more subtlety, if you like, to your rubbing, depending on how hard you press, how you angle that wax crayon. And yeah, looking good. Quite pleased with that so far. I think it's going to work. I know this technique works, as in the transfer will work, so already I'm getting a good feeling that the kind of hour or so spent on the collagraph was well spent. Now I've taken it off the collagraph here, and I'm now, where I've got patches of dark tone, I'm referring back to my original drawing, and I'm actually you know, blocking in some areas of tone, sometimes keeping it a little broken like there, and under the, you know, the lip of the slate roof, blocking it in very dense solid black area, in hope that that gives me a really nice dark tone. I'm also kind of adding to the lines between the bricks. Obviously that's really easy to do because you've got the rubbing as a guide, so this is not work that takes too long. So yeah, kind of almost back to the drawing stage, which is, like I said before, if you do work off your own drawing rather than a photo, you'll have a better feel for the image when it comes to this stage. Okay, let's see how it transfers. Okay, got everything ready, got my gel plate, got some black Amsterdam acrylic, which I find, having done about 6 months of this gel plate work now, I am finding is the best paint to use for transfers. I'll hold it up to the light there, look, it's a really thin film and you can't hang around. If you let it dry too much, it's not going to transfer very well. So on with the rubbing, and this is literally fingertip pressure, and I'm in real time here, so you know, I'm up to about 10 seconds only. Make sure it's made contact, and then peel up, cross your fingers, and you should find that your image has transferred fairly well, as mine has there. Just hold it up to the camera so you can see. Okay, this one I'm going to pull straight off with, I've let that dry, okay, because by the time you've pulled your rubbing off, it's too dry to do an immediate pull from, so leave it to dry completely and then you can pull it off with, as I'm doing here, white or any colour you want, gel medium if you want it to go over another image. I'm just using some white to see how it looks. So nice thin layer of white, on with some cartridge paper, or you know, just drawing paper. This is about 140 GSM. Left that for a good 10 minutes to make sure it was nice and dry, and it pulled off cleanly. And for our first pull, really pleased with that. So I'm going to just, you know, analyse that and go back to my plate. It's another great thing about this technique is you can kind of amend your collagraph plate. So I've just made a few amendments, raised a few more surfaces up, and on with my second one. So with my second rubbing, you know, I'm just checking it there, all looks good. This time I had a bit of fun just applying some colour in subsequent layers with some buff colour. I was trying to capture some of the colours of the original brickwork and the door, so some umbers, some browns, yellow ochre, and then mixed in a little light blue as well just to get some shadow and variety. And then the plan is, once all this is dry, pull it off with another layer of white. You know, as I said before, make sure all of those layers are properly dry before you put your final wet layer down, and you want to make sure this is really well covered, nice and even. You know, you don't want it so thick that it doesn't dry, but you do want to make sure every little bit that you want to pull is given a nice covering. So just rolling up there, there's a patch in the middle that I just needed to go back over. On with some drawing paper, and going to leave that a good 10 minutes, and you can see this one pulled off, and you know, the colour was a nice experiment, a nice addition as well, and then I can go and spend a couple of hours experimenting with this, playing with that collagraph, making amendments, and yeah, fantastic, really enjoyed it, and you know, definitely a nice application of this technique. Okay, there you go, hope you enjoyed it. Now you want to go off and have a go yourselves, so I'll stop talking. As ever, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe, support the channel, share, like, comment below, and I'll see you soon for another video. Take it easy. Ta-da.